recording?
Yes, I will do that right now.
Right. Oh, well, have a great show.
Thank you very much.
Myself, and I'm going to go make a sandwich for my tea.
Cool. Right.
See you in a bit.
See you in a bit. Right, just doing the... Why is everything magic? Typing that in. Off we go. Recording started. Okie dokie. Right, let me just go and go. Everywhere else, all good. And I am also on there. Let me just turn that off so I can't hear the echo. It's all very technical. Right. Tonight is the big one, guys. This is the big question. This is the big question. Why everything is magic? Why? Why is everything magic? Okay. So the magic, the definition for the word magic, that's with a K, not a C. There are many different, very vague definitions for this word. But essentially, it's a metaphysical construct, for want of a better word, fluidic in nature, because the nature of magic is, as you'll find out through this talk, it's fluidic. And it's also layers of ideas. So something that has definitely come out of our journey is this idea of fluidic thinking, which very much embraces this idea of everything is magic, because it's always moving and changing and shifting and evolving. So what you get is if you are rigid in your thinking, you're not going to be able to move with that fluidic energy, if you like. And this idea of layers. So if you are looking at different ways, different perspectives that you have of your reality, then you can bring those things in, you can put them on the shelf, you can throw them in the bin. That's what leads to this idea of fluidic thinking. So I'll explain a little bit more about that as we go on. But essentially, so there are givens in this reality, in this particular reality that we are in, that we experience right now. So number one, everything is frequency. So if everything is frequency, if frequency is energy, it's another given, really. If magic is G, so stay with me. So think miracles. Yeah. What are miracles? I'm just adjusting my camera here because I'm going to say wonky. So miracles are, what are they? Magic, which is energy. So if you take all those things as ifs, yeah, the if-then protocol, if you like, then everything is magic. You with me? So I could leave it there and then, go and have my dinner. But I'm not going to do that, because it wouldn't be me. It would be me if I didn't take that apart a little bit. So let's take it apart. So the first thing is the kind of magic that I'm talking about isn't the stage magician illusion sleight of hand stuff, which is more what the toxic magicians use. They very much use the sleight of hand, look over here while they're doing something over there kind of thing. Yes, I'm not talking about the pull the wool over your eyes stuff. What I am talking about is the at the tip of your fingers type magic. Yeah. If you don't know what I mean by that, I actually have it's a mini workshop. It's a 3-part energy workshop, And in that 3-part energy workshop, you get to experience what that energy, it's like it's electromagnetic energy, yeah, that you get to feel. You feel it, and if you do it enough times, the particular exercises that I show in this workshop, you may even see it as well. And I'll tell you what it looks like. It looks like little sparkles, yeah, and I'll get to what they are in a minute. So what I will do is I will put, there's a couple of links actually. So when the show's finished, when I post the what's the one I'm looking for? The MP3, I will also post the link to the energy workshop and a link to something else, which I'll get to a bit further down the line. So this energy, this electromagnetic energy is you. It's your true nature, if you like. I know some of you might be going, what? Yeah, this is the, you could get into the sciencey kind of the sine, cosine, Euler's equation side of things, which does back up this idea of everything is magic. Essentially, there's a fractal nature of everything, which is the continuation of energy, the spiral, if you like, the spiral that weaves in and weaves back out. It expands and contracts like everything, really, including nature. Nature does that. Nature does not die in the winter. Nature's already getting ready for spring in the winter. If you look carefully, she's doing that, and it's awesome. And there's even a particle. There is a particle which you might have heard of. You might have heard of this particle, which is called a neutrino. And it's actually been talked about. I actually heard someone talk about it today who I've never heard talk about this particle before. So although it's been spoken about a bit more now, it's actually been on their radar for a very long time. And this particle, neutrinos, they travel faster than light. Is it apparently? Yeah, but I'm going with this. I like this. Jumps through space and time and affects changes in atomic structures. Now, to me, you know what that sounds like to me? This sounds like a time-traveling Time Lord, a shape-shifting Time Lord. And it's this idea, this idea that there are particles of light that we are made up of is explored in many different sci-fis. So the one that springs to mind right now is the Star Trek original series, and Kirk and his crew are sent to a planet which is about to be invaded by the Klingons. And the leaders of this planet, they smile a lot, and they're not that bothered about Klingons and guns and stuff. And Kirk's trying to go, come on, we need to, protect you. We need to get guns and do some war. And they're like, we don't need that. And they can't, of course, Kirk and his crew can't understand it. And I don't want to do spoiler alerts, but essentially these beings that are pure love show their true nature at the end, and everyone, the Klingons and the Star Trek were, what was that? What was that? And I'm sure you could guess what that was. But I think what sci-fi for me, because I've been watching sci-fi since I was a very small child. What it's done is it's opened my mind to the possibilities that we are more than these physical bodies. Yeah. And there is actually, and again, this is the other thing I'm going to link in with the other bits and pieces. There is a peer review paper on neutrinos, which I will also share. It's very interesting. So, what does all this mean? What does it mean? What does it mean? How is this any use whatsoever? Because it all sounds very fancy and very sciencey and not very practical, really. And I do like a practical concept. I like, does it do what it says on the tin? And if it doesn't, I throw the tin in the bin. But there's a saying, and it came up really oddly in the Hallmark Christmas films that we don't watch those anymore because we don't have a TV box anymore. But there was this saying, and these things where they're not just in spiritual things; they're all over the place. But there was this saying that came up in this film: when you change the way you see things, the things you see change. And that is essentially the idea of everything being magic is that you can change what you see. That's magic. So how we experience our world is very much determined by your perceptions and your perspectives. So some people would argue they're the same thing. I don't see it that way. I see it as your perspective is the place from where you see things, which is determined by your perceptions, which is how you see things. It's very subtle. Very subtle. And interestingly, the prefix per means through. So through something is something else. Or you might call it your beer goggles. So a really good example that I always use, because it's something that we love doing, is hiking. Yeah. That could be 5 miles, it could be 20, it could be flat, it could be the North Downs, it could be the South Downs, it could be anywhere. So in terms of perspective and perception, so you can be in the same geographical area. So you can be on the South Downs. Yeah. If you're in the bottom bit, in the valley, it looks very different to when you're halfway up the hillside, which looks different again to when you're at the top. Personally, I do not like hill climbs. Do not like it. My calf muscles scream. I've recently adopted 0 drop shoes, which makes them scream even more. But because of what I know is at the top, doesn't matter how many times I have to stop and rest, I will keep going until I get to the top, because you get a massive shift in perspective. Massive. There is nothing like it. When you have broken through that resistance, you've moved through that resistance to reach that different perspective. So how is this magic? Because people say, well, that's just climbing a hill, Ange. That's just moving from A to B. Yes, it is. And sometimes it can feel like moving the body from A to B is a lot easier than moving something metaphysical. So your perception, for example, from A to B, that can be a bit more of a challenge. But when you think about it, if your perception is fed by your perspective, and your perspective is what shapes your reality, it kind of it has to be. It's like no choice. It's really now, because if you've ever experienced love or jealousy or anger, bliss, peace, any of those things that fire you up, you know that any of those feelings will color everything else. It tints everything. So I suppose the question to ask is, what perspective or perceptions do you hold right now? And are there any that you want to flip? Are there any that you want to take to the top of that hill? Or leave down the bottom so you can actually see the bigger picture? I think that's one of the things that I really like, when you reach the top of the hill, is you can experience where you are, but you can see where you've come from and how far you've come, which for me is the only reason to look back, is to say, okay, so it's a bit like, no, actually, I'll get onto that bit in a minute. So when you're looking at how far you've come, you can appreciate that, that you've made that journey, which is recognizing that in yourself is again is magic. That you've made that journey is pure magic. And then seeing the path of where you're going to, or where you're aiming for, at least, even if it's a windy path, you're still aiming for where you want to be. So yeah, what's interesting about that question that I just asked was, when I was going through my notes on this particular subject, which I only tweaked back in 2022 when I was working with a client and she wanted to do this kind of work. I'm like, okay, so I'll just go through my notes and, give them a little tweak if I needed to, because we first started writing all this stuff down back in 2018. And what I realized, so I tweaked them back in 2022 because I'm like, wow, we've moved on our path since then, blimey. And when I was going through these notes again, it's like it's happened again. It wasn't that the notes that I'd tweaked in 2022, they weren't wrong. It's just our perceptions, our perspectives have moved and changed and evolved, which is something that I think, we're told that, if we have an opinion, then we have to have that opinion forever and ever, until the end of time. But that's known as rigid thinking, which is not our true nature. When you look at, just take nature as your teacher. She is not rigid in any way, shape, or form. Even humongous trees move and bend in the wind. So, nature is not rigid. So we are nature. So our very nature says that we are fluidic, without question. So there's an evolution there, and this evolution, which we're all experiencing right now, definitely. That is a given. The planet Earth, obviously. Let's run another one. Ascended in 2012, and what we've been doing really is playing catch up. So we are essentially what we're seeing now is the overlay of what we thought was a reality is got big holes in it now. So when we look at nature, I don't know if you guys have experienced this. I know we have, and the people that we know have. It's like in the Celestine prophecy, when everything gets really vivid, the colors are really vivid. Even without my yellow glasses on that I wear, just to make everything really vivid, so I get that experience. It's even without those glasses on, the colors, it's like everything is super mega HD. I don't know if any of you have been experiencing that, but I know it's something that is definitely happening. And isn't that magic? I defy anybody to say that is not magic. So yeah, acknowledging the truth that everything is magic is what fuels this evolution of consciousness. So your own inner magic, your inner temple, and your immediate reality outside of yourself, your outer temple, is in this evolutionary stage right now. So your inner landscape is where it begins. And it always begins with you, because you are the magical creator being. You are neutrinos. You are light. You are this being of love consciousness, 432 hertz. So this frequency of your inner landscape, it emits. Well, frequency is a waveform, sines and cosine waves, which is what Euler's equation is all about. Ian knows more about that than I do, to be quite frank. But everything is waveforms, obviously. And frequency is no different. So when our inner frequency is rippling out, and then that returning wave comes back of that frequency, it brings back with it. So, this idea of law of attraction, I'm even reconsidering law of reflection, because it's more of a returning wave of your own frequency that you've put out that, then ripples back and brings with it the things that are on that same frequency. So it's not attraction. It's not even really reflection. What would you say that is? That's a bouncing, if you like, the law of bouncing. I quite like that. Get on your gym balls and have a bounce. It's actually really good. It lifts your spirits, actually. If you're ever feeling a bit down, pump up a gym ball and have a bounce. I used to get people doing that all the time if they were feeling a bit crappy. It's like bouncing on the bed when you're a child. So yeah, that idea of that frequency rippling back to you is very much described in that saying, as within, so without, as above, so below. So nature does that. Nature, as a witch, nature is our teacher. She's not our only teacher, but she teaches us everything that we need to know. And in her expansiveness, which is nature, she creates and expands. I mean, I'm just looking at the trees out here. So a few years ago, there was a tree that was not doing very well out there, and they weren't as full. If that makes sense. These past 2 or 3 years, with the change of the light and the frequencies that are coming through, these trees, all I can see out there is green, and I could always see the houses across the road, even in the summer. So for me, that is. It's like looking at a forest outside the window. It's amazing. But that's that expansiveness, that creation, that expansiveness. Yes, she contracts during the winter, but she doesn't die. There is no death there. It's a contraction, which then expands and then contract. So it's a pulse, it's a breathing, it's a moving spiral, if you like, which again goes back to the idea of fractal nature of this sacred geometry. A spiral is a pure pure magic, a pure symbol of magic for absolutely without question. So it's a circulation of creative energy, essentially. So it's a circulation of magic. So when we create, when we're called human beings, that's a bit of a rubbish label, actually, I would suggest. But when we create from a place of divinity, from a place of that pure love consciousness, from a 432 hertz, from our connection to divine source energy, then that experience is very fluidic. It's very synchronistic, expansive, like super focused, and yet super aware, and yet not aware, because everything falls away. When you are in, as they say, in the zone, everything else falls away, and you become what it is that you are creating. That's a very different experience to when we create from a place of fear or guilt or shame, all those very dense programs, all those very dense thought forms. So when that happens, our true energetic force, it's like it becomes distorted. Because if something moves through density, so if light moves through a prism, it distorts. If you're looking at a spoon in a glass of water, it's distorted because it's moving through something that's denser than light. That makes sense? It makes sense to me. Or is denser than the thing that the light is moving through, is probably a better way of putting it. So if we are creating through the density of fear, guilt, shame, hate, all those things that we are taught to embrace, then our end result of our creative endeavors is distorted and feels off or looks wonky, or people would say things like, oh, there's something about that makes me feel weird. That kind of, it has an energy to it that is not whole, for want of a better, because it's been distorted. Does that make sense? So we know when something feels right in our gut, if you like, in our heart, in our gut. But we also know when something feels very off. And it can be a tiny little thing. So what is that? What is that we are tapping into? It's energy. which is magic. So what is it that creates these distortions? So back in 2022, I think it was 2022, I had a series of dreams which I will never forget. One of them, I met my higher self, which was really funny because it was to do with the shoe. It was very bizarre. But there were a couple of others that I had that were around the nature of energy and how it works. And I was told this is how everything works. I'm like, okay, what is it then? So the first one was this vessel. It was a clear vessel. And there was what looked like water moving through it. Not very fast. It was just moving through a steady pace. But the vessel was full of this energy, which looks like water, that was moving through it. And it had no beginning and no end. But essentially, we are vessels for that energy that moves through us all the time. It's moving through us all the time. It doesn't stop. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, so what am I supposed to do with that then? And what's interesting is that, you know, this there have been instances where things have come up and I go, oh, okay, so I can fit that in there. Okay, brilliant. So that was just one, which, you know, if you go back to what are the givens? So everything is energy, frequency, light, neutrinos. So when you are looking at, when you can see energy, if you do the mini workshop, you see these like flashes of light between your hands. For me, that's neutrinos. That's what you're seeing. You are literally seeing I nicknamed it the 5D particle, yeah. But it's literally, you see it between your fingers. If you look at a tree or in a forest and you see that strange morphing, yeah, sometimes it appears as light, sometimes it appears as like a moving haze or something like that. That's it. For me, that's what the neutrinos are. Even when you see light dancing on water, that, for me, that's neutrinos. They're showing themselves to you. And you might think that sounds daft. I actually quite like it because I have a little song that I sing to them as well. So yeah, everything is energy, frequency, light, neutrinos. These things are always in motion. Yeah. This energy is always moving through us. So, you know, if that's been supercharged by a solar flare or a coronal mass ejection or through other things that the sun is doing, then, you know, we are going through that. We are literally walking through those energies. But as it moves through us, so this is talking about the distortion. So as this energy is moving through us, if our vessel, so the clear vessel, has any pockets of density in there, so I don't know, think of it like a rock stuck to the side of a vessel, yeah, of a glass vessel. So there's a rock stuck to it. Some idiot has glued a rock to the inside of this vessel, yeah, and it creates havoc, does it not? As the energy moves through, it distorts around that thing that's glued to the side of the vessel. Yeah. It literally makes waves. It ripples around it. Or you could also think of it, you know, in a river. If there's a rock in the middle of the river, the water it kind of distorts around it. So it's not free flowing. That's how I see what happens if we hold on to. Literally, we're holding on to these dense things because we are afraid to let them go. Yeah. So I see it like a pinball machine. That was a very clear image I got. So as this energy moves through our vessel, it pings and distorts off of these dense pieces of energy. Yeah. And it does, it creates ripples and eddies and all sorts of things, which we then, the labels that we put on those are pain or discomfort, or we might actually label it with a medical term. Google is not your friend when it comes to that, because you can have you'd be walking around post-its all over yourself with all the labels that we are told. We need to do that because that's what that's called. Well, actually, I beg to differ, because essentially all it is something that we're holding on to so tightly we cannot let it go, because if we let it go, then what happens? And that's the thing. What happens when we let go of that? And it can be scary letting go of that stuff. But if you are observing everything with magical eyes, then you will realize that not only what that is, so energy, dense energy, that actually doesn't belong to me, because that, if we are beings of greater beings of light, that span many universes, then what is this little thing glued to the side of my vessel? What is that? That's not mine. That belongs to someone else. So let's let go of that shit, shall we? Literally. So allowing the energy to pass through, and allow that energy, because that energy that's moving through us is magic, is neutrinos, is the stuff that stars are made of. It's not a whimpering thing in the corner. Things made out of. So it's going to be able to just, give that a little nudge and take it with it as it moves through. So let it. Yes, it might feel a bit weird when it does that. You might feel as it actually moves through. I've had that myself. I've actually felt it as something has, and what it kind of feels like. What does that feel like? It can feel like a very sharp pain. So, for example, sometimes I get that right on my big toe, right at the end of my big toe. Yeah. There'd be a really sharp pain, like someone stuck it with a knife. Yeah. So all I do is I just move my foot. So you might have to wiggle it around a bit until there's a clear exit point. Does that make sense? Sounds really weird, but try it. Because it's going to go down. The energy moves downward, yeah? So it's going to come out somehow through your feet or through other orifices. So allow it, yeah? It doesn't always feel good to, but allow it, do it, let it, take it, yeah? That makes sense. So you can set an intention for that. Intention is 99% of universal law from where I'm standing. You can also use breath work to help you hold that space for that to move through and out. Yeah, because you don't want that stuff anymore. You really don't. Also, building that energy of non-attachment. So in yogic terms, pratyahara, yeah, that non-attachment. So as this energy is moving through, if you can employ your breath work and place your body in a position where that energy just moves through you and takes with it anything that you do not need. Yeah, it's very powerful. Creativity as well. If you can allow yourself to be in that magical, creative flow, then that's perfect. Also, allowing and maybe setting an intention to allow yourself to connect to your true self and being guided. Allow yourself to be guided by that aspect of yourself. Because it is not going to steer you wrong, ever. And also, one of the big things, and the thing that everyone is some people are going, yeah, come on, bring it on. Other people are going, oh my God, what is happening? So when your biggest fear, when your greatest fear gets in front of you and roars at you, rears its ugly head, and it's like, oh my God, just know everybody on the planet is having that same experience. It looks different for every single one of us, but we are all facing that right now because it'll be the thing that's been buried the longest in the deepest place because you haven't wanted to look at it. So, now is the time. If you were ever going to do that, if you were ever going to look at that and just acknowledge it and then call it a cab, yeah, get an Uber on it, it's now. Because now we are supported by this energy of what people call ascension or expansion of consciousness. There's no better time, yeah, to do this work. This magical work, this activating your true nature, your magical senses, your magical eyes. Yeah. I've already said that bit about pain, didn't I? That's interesting. I jumped ahead and then jumped back again like a time lord. That's funny. So yeah, that's weird. I did a lot of jumping around there without realizing what I was doing. So yeah, that was the other thing I was going to say about pain. So as this energy moves through, and you might get a pain, like for example in my big toe, yeah, goes and I'm like, ooh, okay. Holding a space for it. So witnessing it is essentially the same thing. So you witness it, you acknowledge that it's leaving, and you witness it leaving. So you make sure it actually goes out the door and doesn't sneak back in as it's closing. Yeah. Be aware of that. Essentially what you're doing, what that is, the energy of that is, it's not fear. It's not hate. It's a neutral place, that non-attachment. It's a very powerful place to be able to, and it's really challenging. We've this past couple of years, we've had some very challenging stuff. But essentially, the place that we always come back to is, witnessing what is passing in front of our magical eyes and not allowing that to then leach into, get its tendrils into how you then want to create your reality or live your life, as people would say. Yeah. So when you are allowing that, whatever it is, to leave, essentially, because as it leaves, it's going to make a big fuss. It's going to throw a tantrum on its way out. Yeah. Because so the physical body, the way I see it, the physical body is the density. Yeah. This is dense. Yeah. So if you're feeling something in this dense body, essentially that's your call to say it is leaving. Yeah. Because it's going to come through, your aura, your metaphysics. It's like the princess and the pea. So it if you label it while it's out here somewhere, then it's got permission to then manifest in your physical body and do its thing until you say, okay, out you go, taxi. If that makes sense. So instead of labeling this thing, this pain, as blah blah or what's it, yeah, and giving it permission to stay and emit its frequency that oh, that's the label, there we go. And we all have done it because that's what we're taught to do, because we're taught that those people over there, they've got a lot more to say about what that is than your toe, Angie. Yeah, that's a blah blah, what's it, flimmy-majig, and you go, oh, that's the label, I'm going to put a what's it, whatever I said, can't remember, thingy-majig label on that, and then it starts to emit that blah blah. It's magic, see? It's magic, it's spells, it's words, it's magic, because that's what they use. That's the toxic magician side of things. Yeah, it's how institutions work, because they're all very rigid in how they do these things. They have lots of rules and instructions and very set ways of doing things. And the thing they don't like, and if you've ever gone up against an institution and tried to say, but I don't know, what's an example? I had that actually when I broke my wrist in 2019, and they were trying to give me drugs. I'm like, I don't want your drugs. I'm quite happy sitting here holding my wrist and giving it healing. I don't need your drugs, thank you very much. And they kept trying to do it. And when I got in the room where they were tractioning it, they said, you sure you don't want any? No, it's all right, I'll just have a bit of gas and air, thanks. So I did my breathing techniques with gas and air. I was pissing myself laughing. They tractioned my wrist, not a problem. But they kept trying to push those drugs on me. It's like they really thought I needed those drugs. So, no thanks. Just give me a bit of gas in there and I'll be fine. So essentially, yeah. It's saying no to those labels. It's unlabeling the labels, if you like, or putting your own labels, because labels and thought forms, they're not all negative. So you could actually reprogram yourself and stick a label on my big toe that says I am the creator and I allow this energy to move out of my big toe. It's magic. So that's what hypnotherapy is. It's a way of putting labels on that completely dispel, now there's a cool word, the labels, the negative labels, the dense labels that were on there before. So yes, So the other thing about your creativity and how you work your magic is, if you like, is it will be unique to you. Which is the opposite. That's the flip side. of, you must do as you're told, dogma, rigid thinking, which is a magic of a different kind. That's very, like I say, it's very toxic magician magic. And it's all very, if you don't do as it's based in fear. It's based in fear and shame and guilt, and being very polarized in your perceptions and your perspectives. And that's the other thing I was told in my there were two dreams. They were like 2 nights apart, if that makes sense. One after the other. It's probably a better way of saying it. I do speak English. Just can't always get my words out properly. So the other one was, no matter what happens, stay open. And I'm like, well, I don't even know what that means. And what, but in my dream this was, and they kept slapping my hand and saying, no matter what happens, stay open. And I'd be coming up with all these if, buts and maybes, and I'd get slapped on the hand and say, no matter what happens, stay open. So I was telling Ian about this dream, and it's like, well, I don't know what to say about that kind of thing. And I'm like, okay. So what does that even mean? And, passes by as it does, I realised is that what that means, it can mean anything. But essentially for me, what it means, stay open to all the possibilities, because we are essentially the void space. We are the void, and the frequency that we emit then comes out of the void as a projection, if that makes sense. So stay open to all the possibilities, to every possibility that can possibly happen. And when those things fall away that don't belong to us, that are dense, when those things fall away, you can bet your bottom that the things that are aligned to you will in, literally, which is magic. Those instant, and I've done instant heals on myself. I have, I'm sure you guys have been experiencing that, those instant synchronicities that go like that. They just, and you're like, I love it when people tell me those stories. I love it because it tells me that point that we're in at the moment, that magical point where we're in the 0 point energy, where everything is happening all at once right now, that's where it is. That's what's happening right now. And that's pure magic. And that's everything. Everything. So as we walk this unfolding synchromistic path, following those signposts, which you can illuminate if you want, you can set that intention, creating from our true frequency, allowing those things to fall away that aren't ours. And when that, being receptive to the amazingness that then follows behind it when that goes, our inner and outer worlds, then they shift and they shape our reality with these new perceptions and these new perspectives that we have, which is Shangri-La or Summerlands or New Earth, or whatever that is that you want to call it, which is magic, which is why everything is magic. Anyway,
it's a kind of magic.
Absolutely. It's a kind of magic.
That's what I'm reminded of. It's a kind of magic.
Oh, Andy, we want the full song.
You have to post it, Andy. You'll have to go and grab it and post it in the group.
The one thing that resonated, everything resonated with what you were saying, Angie. But the one thing that kept sort of popping into my head and sort of floating around was the invisible force field that we all things have, which is the torus.
Yes.
And the flow of that torus energy will depict and depend. When you were talking about the law of attraction and all the rest of it and reflection, a lot of that is dependent, whether you agree with the fact that it is attraction or whether it's reflection or whether it's something else. The flow of your torus, if it flows out of the top of your head, out and back through the bottom and up again, will attract certain things. And if it flows the other way, which I believe is the negative way, if it flows down, it's pulling your energy down to the earth, comes back up, and it's pulling it back through your head to continue that negative thing, which can be construed as depression or negative feelings or negative emotions. Whereas if it flows the other way, you're free of all of those things, and it's positivity flowing out of your head, back out, back round, and back up. Does that make any sense to your thought process?
I think there are two streams of it. I think there are 2 or 3 streams of energy. So we're connected from Father Sky down, from Mother Earth up, which then, for me, that kind of creates that electromagnetics at the heart. So that's 2 streams there, and then you've got the toroidal field that kind of moves in and up and out and round, and then you've also got the Ida and the Pingala, which cross, and that's how the serpent energy moves up through the spine. So we've got so many. That's not even counting all the nadis that you've got all over your body, all these little tiny wormholes, essentially. All through your whole being. We're well, I think we're more not than anything, which is why I consider that we are the void space, because we are not just light, we're also the void space, which people would say is dark. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Totally.
Cool.
Anybody else want to? Oh, Shalina's joined now as well. Right, well, thank you for your show.
That's right.
I thought I'd just jump in before you stop the recording and just make a little bit of a contribution.
Cool.
So I will let you sign off. I'll mute myself and let you sign off.
Cool. I shall stop the recording. Stop recording. Fantastic.
Just what I say, thank you so much. I really enjoyed that.
Cool.
It was really good. I just want to share something as well.
Yeah.
When you were saying earlier about looking back and letting go. I mean, I'm a hiker and a walker as well, so
yeah.
I love being on top of a mountain and looking back. But today I went in hospital.
Yeah.
And as I was walking through the corridors, so years ago I was a right wonky donkey, and I just felt as I was walking through the corridors towards her, and in fact, the ward that she's on and the bed she's in, I was in that. I was all over bloody Withenshaw Hospital.
Wow.
But I just felt really grateful and really humbled by where I am now from where I was.
Yeah.
I was a right wonky donkey, didn't know any better.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you so much for your show. I enjoyed it. Always do. It's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dolly. I think there's a show coming up at 7, isn't there, this week? So
there is indeed. We have Shalina on with her Star Healing show.
Excellent.
And Shalina's already in the chat now. So good evening to Shalina.
Hi, Shalina.
Hi there, everyone.
Hi.
Okay.
Angie, I just caught the end of Angie's show. That
Cool.
sounded interesting.
Ah. I should go and grab the recording.
Yeah, I will do.
Cool. Right, I'm going to go and have my dinner. So see you guys.
Thanks a lot, Angie.
That's all right. Thank
Have a
you.
lovely evening.
See you later, Dolly. Enjoy your evening and your dinner.
Will do. Bye.
Bye.
I did say that at the beginning. I did that at the beginning. Oh, need to there, end video chat, leave and sign off. Hang on, I'm still live.